You know, some of you are going to completely disagree with me. And maybe I've told you this before, but I just do not like vegetables. I never have. I'm guessing never will. Even when I'm at a restaurant and they say, that meal comes with broccoli, is that okay? And I'm always like, no. Can I substitute the broccoli for some french fries? I mean, french fries are a vegetable too, kind of. I like two vegetables. I like corn and mashed potatoes. Other vegetables? Honestly, I don't know what you people see in them. Carrots? Gross, whether they're cooked or raw. Peas? I actually, honestly, have to swallow them like pills because when you bite them and the mushy stuff comes out of the inside of it, it makes me want to gag. Lima beans, they're vulgar. Okra, that's like eating a slimy earthworm. And the list goes on and on. You know what's the worst? Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts are the worst. They aren't even natural. They are man-made, tiny, miniature cabbages. Do you know what I do like? Fruit. I love fruit. Fruit is God's gift to man. And that's why in the Garden of Eden, God told Adam and Eve to feel free to eat of any fruit in the garden, because it was a perfect world at that moment in time. And if we're being honest here, if God had stuck Brussels sprouts on the tree of knowledge, Adam and Eve wouldn't have committed the first sin. Snake would have been like, hey, Eve, eat this Brussels sprout. And Eve would have been like, dude, get that thing out of my face. What is it? That's gross. Is it a tiny cabbage? Problem solved. No first sin. But sadly, there was fruit on that tree. And Jesus knows that fruit is awesome too. You don't hear him talking about vegetables in the Bible. In John 15, Jesus says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. And Jesus continues on later, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So Jesus is the vine, we are the branches, and we are to bear fruit. Not vegetables, folks, fruit. What exactly do you think that means when Jesus says that we're supposed to bear fruit? I mean, when you say bear fruit, the first thing that comes to my mind in the Bible for me is when God tells Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply. I'm pretty sure that's not what Jesus is talking about when he says bear much fruit. I am no longer of the fruit-bearing age. And after Leah, the doctors did some stuff and promised that there would be no more surprise fruit, if you know what I mean. So what fruit are we talking about? Well, the second fruit that I think about in Scripture is in Paul's description of the fruit of the Spirit. In Galatians 5, Paul says that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That's a pretty good list. Those are some pretty good fruit to strive for and to desire to have in your life. I mean, if someone were to ask you to describe me and they said, Pastor Pete is loving, joyful, peaceful, patient, kind, good, faithful, and gentle, well, I'd be a lucky man. Sadly, people are actually more likely to describe me as an actual fruit than say those things. You know, the fruit of the Spirit sometimes is one of those things that we read and think, man, sure it would be nice to have those things. But at the same time, we don't really pursue them. It's like me when I watch TV and a good-looking guy takes off his shirt and he's got some six-pack abs and he's like, oh, look at my belly. Oh, you could wash your laundry here. And I think sometimes when I see that, six-pack abs would be nice to have. And then I get back to finishing the bag of Doritos that I'm eating. Yeah. Fruit of the Spirit, fruit through Jesus. Those would be nice to have. But do we really pursue them? So many times when I look at my life and the lives of us as Americans, I don't see the pursuit of Jesus and his fruit showing up high on our lists. It seems like one of those things that we think would be nice to have, but something that isn't actively sought. And I think the biggest reason is because we've been convinced that there is more important fruit to chase after. What do I mean? Well, if I were to ask you what the most important thing in your life is, you would say family. And then I would stare at you for just a moment, and then you would remember that I'm a pastor, and then you would change it to, God. Of course, God. I just thought you knew that I meant that it was family after God. So your mouth would eventually say God, but what would your calendar say? You see, if you want to know what it really is the most important thing in someone's life, you look at their calendar. You look at their itinerary. You look at their to-do list. You look at what they spend most of their time doing. And then based upon the amount of time committed to each thing, you can easily tell what is the least important and what is the most important things in their life. And these things will teach you about who this person really is. If you look at your itinerary and you see that you haven't exercised all week, then no matter what you say, you are not passionate about fitness. If you spend 12 hours this week buying clothes for your dog and dressing them up, then you may need to seek counseling. If you spend 40 hours this week yelling insults into a headset, then you are probably a teenage boy playing video games, or you work in customer service. You see, it's by looking at where we spend our actual time that the true story comes to light about what matters the most. If you haven't called or talked to your mother in 3 months, don't tell me on Mother's Day how important and special your mom is to you. Don't tell me that you're a loving father if you didn't do anything with your kid this week. Don't tell me that you're a good worker if you called off 3 different times this week. Our itineraries speak more truths about us than our words ever could. If I looked at your calendar, what would I learn about you? If I looked at your itinerary, would God show up at all? Oh, I wish he could, but I'm just so busy. There isn't anywhere in my whole day that I have even one spare moment to think. I know, we're all busy. And I also know that as Americans, we spend an average of 3 to 4 hours a day watching or streaming television. The average social media user spends 2.5 hours on social media. Teens spend an average of 5 hours a day splitting their time between YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram. Is it really that we don't have any time? Or is it that we choose to spend our time elsewhere? And these places where we are spending our time, couldn't we actually cut back on them just a little bit to focus on growing some fruit? Shouldn't growing fruit show up just a little bit higher on our list? If your home was a little bit more dirty, but your soul is cleaner, well then that sounds like time well spent to me. If your lawn doesn't have those nice little lines mowed into it, but you are more patient, well then that was time well spent. If you didn't join the 3rd sports league of that same exact type of sport, but instead you helped the poor, well then that was time well spent. Fruit will only start to grow on our vines when we stop chasing after Brussels sprouts. Now, I'm not calling you to give up everything in your life that isn't Jesus. If there is something in your life that is keeping you from Jesus, then yes, you should absolutely give that up. But most of the things that we do aren't actually mutually exclusive from Him. And because they're not, our goal should be to find a way to plug Jesus into everything that we do. I don't want you to quit your job. I want you to find out how to bear fruit while at work. I don't want you to give up sports. Although, listen, I do have to say this. Parents, listen. Your child is never going to be a professional athlete. Your child is not going to make you millions of dollars because you found them a super intense t-ball coach. Learning, cooperation, good sportsmanship, getting exercise, and having fun, those are the reason for your child to play sports. They are not practicing for the Olympics, so please take a breather. If you enjoy sports, your kids do, find a way to put Jesus in the center of it. You cannot bear fruit if the vine isn't Jesus. And what fruit should we be bearing? Well, kindness, goodness, gentleness, love. Putting other people before ourselves. And we've especially lost touch with this one. Do you know how many messages I get from kids who are in need of service hours for the National Honor Society? They had many months to get these hours, but during that time they hadn't volunteered for anything that would fill these slots. That's our fault as parents. We teach them to be so self-absorbed because we are pushing them so hard to chase Brussels sprouts. It's all about what they can get, how they can make a name for themselves, how they can give us something to brag about. My kid gets good grades. My kid is a star athlete. My kid bought themselves this. My kid is so popular. Whatever happened to my kid loves Jesus? My kid is kind. My kid helps the elderly. My kid volunteers. My kid actually cares about others. Where's the real fruit? This week I got a message about one of our kids, Audrey Toom. That's Jamie's daughter. Audrey was given an assignment in school to pick a topic that she would then need to do a 5-slide presentation on. The topic was to be about something that interests you. You know that the majority of these youth are going to pick a topic about a sport, some kind of sports star, or a musician. Because that is the fruit that we have trained them their whole lives to pursue. Value in recognition. Much to the teacher's surprise, Audrey picked Jesus. Well, the teacher was confused and said, is that a rapper or something? And Audrey said, no, Jesus. And the teacher said, so you're doing religion? And Audrey said, no, Jesus. Is that okay? The teacher replied, I'm not sure. I'll have to check with Mrs. Knoll. His teacher isn't going to check with Mrs. Knoll over the many musicians, sports stars, or other mundane or self-absorbed topics that the students pick. But she does have to check about Jesus. Why? Because nobody has picked him as a topic before. It makes me so pumped to see one of our youth putting themselves out there for Jesus. And it does beg the question, why is this the first time that Jesus was picked? I don't feel like our kids are to blame. I really feel like this one is on us. Not only are we pursuing Brussels sprouts, but we are pushing them on our kids. Kids are allowed to miss church, but they won't miss practice. What message does that send them? If there's a game on Sunday, sorry God. We'll make sure that homework gets done. But how about Bible reading? We'll watch a TV show as a family, but how often do we do family devotions? Chores better get done. But how about doing something for the elderly neighbor? We'll sing a song at a talent show, but not one about Jesus. I've had kids get grounded so that they couldn't come to youth group. That's what they were grounded from. And then we're surprised that when they're asked in a project to choose something that is important to them, nobody picks Jesus. You can't grow fruit if you keep choosing Brussels sprouts. We need to start putting Jesus in everything. And if he can't be in it, then neither should we. And we need to start doing this not just for us. We need to start doing this for our kids. The world needs Jesus, but they're never going to find him until we put effort into actually growing some fruit instead of chasing Brussels sprouts. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Take care. God bless. Hope to see you soon.